For the first time in about a decade, the West Tigers look like they actually know what they're trying to do, and they actually look like they're going to turn the club around. But going into 2024, I didn't have all my expectations that high for him. But then this trial game happened. And you can't really say it's panic stations because, well, they've been in panic stations for 2 years already. And I can't really say I am too shocked because, well, I did tip the Tigers to come second last rather than last. So is that really much of an improvement? But I do think that 2024 and going forward is the biggest test of Benji Marshall's entire rugby league career. The pressure wasn't supposed to be on Benji this early. Tim Sheens was meant to be there for 2 years. We all know that Lee said that death, taxes, and that Tim Sheens would be at the club in 2024, but he's not. Benji Marshall is now the man in charge, and he has just been thrown into the fire and into this absolute mess. I think only the bravest of Tigers fans had them any chance of playing finals footy in 2024, but 3 straight wooden spoons, that is the only way I can see Benji getting sacked. But unfortunately, after watching that trial match, and I guess it is only one trial match, I am starting to get really concerned about the West Tigers. And a lot of people say their roster on paper is better this year than it was last year. And outside of some young guns improving because they're a year more experienced, I can't really see it. I think the halves pairing is probably a little bit worse, but I do think that Luke Brooks and the Tigers weren't exactly the best marriage. But I do think on paper that you'd probably take Brooks and Dewey over Sullivan and Caesar. I know it's only one game, and at the moment I still stand by that. I think Abby Coruscant is probably the best dummy half in rugby league, but that was probably the worst game I've seen him play in a long time. That forward pack's got absolutely no identity, and when you're paying Isaiah Papali'i and John Bateman all this money, that is very concerning. And dare I say, outside of Jareen Buller, who's the young gun in this team? I know they've got the Fainu brothers, they're still coming through, and look, Latu's probably a year away from debuting, let alone a few years away from turning into the superstar we all know he can be. By all accounts, they've got some young gun juniors coming through, and look, let's not be too critical here, but when was the last time a Holly Taylor Jr. actually even stayed at the Tigers? I'm not trying to kick Tigers fans while they're down, because I think it's fair to say that they were probably the most disappointing team in the preseason challenge. I mean, they got the perfect scenario outside the Brisbane Broncos. Out of all the teams they got to play at their best, they got to play the St. George Illawarra Dragons. And look, Dragons, you should definitely be happy with how that trial match went on the weekend. And who knows, maybe you're better than we are all expecting, but let's be honest. And then the week before, you get to play a New Zealand Warriors team with 12 men for 60 minutes. And guess what? They still nearly beat ya. I'm not trying to sound like an a-hole, but the West Tigers are in absolute deep. And that's not a shock to anyone. When you're going for 3 straight wooden spoons, it's hard not to be. But Benji Marshall, to try and turn this club around, this current group of players around, this current core of players around, is going to be tough. I genuinely think it's the biggest test of his entire rugby league career, because 24 months ago, this guy started his broadcasting career at Fox League with no interest in coaching. The West Tigers couldn't get a bloody coach after they sacked Madge Maguire, whose stock has only gone up and he's now the bloody Blues coach. Benji had no interest in coaching. You know, maybe one day in the future he would have, but he didn't go straight into coaching like John Sutton, like Sam Burgess. Instead, he went to the broadcast desk, and the West Tigers legitimately could not find a coach. They came up with this bizarre plan to put their head of football, who said he wasn't going to be a coach, as a 2-year interim coach with Benji Marshall as his assistant before they promoted Benji to the top job. And less than, 6 months into it, Tim Sheens was gone. And I honestly don't know why. The Tigers were really bad last year, sure, but they weren't as bad as they were the year before. And at the very least, even the Tigers, if they do go on to get another spoon here and Tim Sheens is still your coach, going into 2025, you get that little sign of hope that Benji isn't your coach, and then Benji gets to start fresh with Jerome Luai as a half. Benji Marshall has so much work to do. And I think off the field, the Tigers are actually headed in the right direction when it comes to a footballing standpoint. But on the field, it still looks more like a disaster than it's ever been. There's still some nice pieces there. I mean, Jareem Buller's obviously the standout. I mean, he was still a gun despite that team on a weekend. Outside of that, I think Justin Olam is probably a bit past his prime, but I still think he can do a job. I'm not going to count Api Coruscant just yet after one bad trial game, and that's the thing with this whole video and this whole situation, I think, is am I overreacting to one trial game? Maybe the Dragons are just better than what we think, but if I'm going off my beautiful insight into this game of rugby league, it's just going to be such a hard gig for Benji. And I know we all knew that already. And Benji hasn't had the best career. You know, he started off red hard. He was everyone's favourite player. Then he had a few bad years at the Tigers. He went to rugby, came back, wasn't the best. And then the late part of his career, he had his little resurgence. He changed the way he played and we all fell back in love with Benji Marshall. And if Benji can get the absolute best out of some of these players on this team, on this roster currently, then that would be such an achievement because no West Tigers coach has done that since Tim Sheens in the mid-2000s. They haven't made finals since 2011 and every single head coach hasn't been able to get the job done. But if Benji Marshall can do it, then that would be his greatest achievement in his entire rugby league career. And I'm not saying he can't, but the evidence shows that it's going to be very, very difficult. Maybe it is just a case of waiting until 2025, but even then, if they're going into that season off the back of 3 straight wooden spoons, then maybe Benji Marshall isn't even the head coach there anymore. I mean, the whole board's gone. Who's to say that Benji Marshall, who was hired under that old board, isn't going to be the next one on that chopping block? I'd hate to see it, yes, but can I see it? Unfortunately, the correct answer is absolutely. It's not all doom and gloom for the Tigers. If they make the right decisions, then they will go a long way in getting back to the finals over the next few years. If they can keep one of their young guns, if they can develop some of the players on this current roster, if they can get the best out of Adam Doueihi and he stays injury-free. Brent Naden's a bit older, but we all saw what he did at Penrith. Charlie Staines, I think, could be a winger on a first-grade team. Jaden Sullivan's got all the potential in the world. Obviously, you got Buller, who is the man. Justin Olam, Stefano Latufeno, Stafford Toa, even Alex Twal, Alex Seyfarth. I mean, they've shown signs. Isaiah Papali'i, John Bateman, even the other Fainu brothers, the forwards. There's some talent there. There's some young guns coming through. The Tigers are going really well in the juniors. It's just, we've seen this all before and we've seen numerous people fail. And I would absolutely love to see Benji Marshall turn it around. But if I had to say right now, do I think he's going to? Unfortunately, no. But if anyone can turn this group of players around, this core of players around, you better bet it's the West Tigers' best player of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know down below. Do you think this is the biggest test of Benji Marshall's rugby league career? Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.